Hello, Mr. Raman. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Could I please request you to briefly introduce yourself?
Okay, very good morning. Thank you for first of all giving me this opportunity. My full name is Raman Narasimhan. By way of my employment, I'm a vice president within Cognizant Technology Solutions. And as you may know, Cognizant Technology Solutions is one of the world's leading IT service providers. Within Cognizant Technology Solutions, I'm part of a very big service line, which is called Digital Business and Technology. And I run their advisory services based out of India and part of the India leadership team.
Since you have been in this role for many years now, could you please talk about the kind of roles that you have taken up and how they have played so far?
I'm almost coming close to about 3 decades of work experience in this field. And ever since I came out of my post-graduation way back in 1991, and I've been continuously working in the IT industry. The interesting part is, right from my first day at job, I was actually in data and analytics related work only. I've not gone and done anything else in my life. So 30 years ago, some parts of whatever that we are doing today in data and analytics was not even known by those kind of terminologies. So I've been someone who is playing with data, either processing data, either taking data from multiple places or from mainframes, and then using it for decision making. So I've been continuously in this business. It's a very big continuum all the way from the place that the data originates, and finally that the data is consumed by the business users in the form of either standard reports, information, or advanced analytics that is applied on top of data. So that's briefly, my subject area expertise. I have worked across multiple industries and across geographies also. So I spent a good amount of time, almost a third of my time, working in India, working in Europe, Singapore, United States, and of course, servicing clients literally worldwide, all the way from Sydney, Melbourne to Portland in the US, the Far East, or even Seattle for that matter.
Right.
So very wide range of industry coverage, very wide range of customers, primarily Fortune 500 customers worldwide, including India, everybody in the data analytics space. And in terms of work, spanning all the way from providing thought leadership to solutioning, to architecting, to actually building it, to implementing it, to maintaining it, going back many years. So it's the complete spectrum of services that I have probably managed to do, but remaining within this particular space.
Understood, sir. And that's very exciting to hear how fast things are changing. And in your career spanning 30 years, 3 decades now, a lot has changed. So, sir, what is it about? What's that constant about the field of data analytics or data science that excites you every day? What is it in this field that you would say is most interesting, or that is something that has kept you in this field for so
long? Very interesting question. In fact, it's got an emotional connect also, so
Absolutely.
to speak.
Yeah.
There were times that I actually wanted to get out of this particular field. And if you look at several of my friends and colleagues, they would have tried their hands in doing multiple things within the IT spectrum itself. But every time I wanted to get out and do something different, meaning get out of data and analytics and do something else, I was actually drawn more into it. So in a way, I was like stuck in a quicksand and kept going deeper and deeper into it. Now, every time I went deeper, I actually started enjoying it a lot more than feeling suffocated. So this was very unique. I didn't realize it. There would have been a point in time when I would have said, hey, have I seen enough of it? And should I not do something different? And I would have probably been assigned a particular role, or I would have been asked to take up a very important role, which would have clearly required me to do a lot more of the digging, a lot more of understanding, getting deeper and deeper into that particular space. almost to the extent of saying, yeah, I'm going much, much more deeper than where I was a few years ago. So if there is one thing that really excites me in this is if one can recognize the true power, and this is something that has to come from deep down your heart, and your heart and mind has to sync up. This is very important. If everyone believes that decision making, even if it is personal in your life, or the decision making that you're doing for clients is based on data,
Right.
and you can make the decisions correctly if it is backed up by good data, then this field will be fascinating for anybody. It has a lot of logic to it. Now, some people may disagree with me, but I can tell you that even if you want to do something in your own personal life, you go back, collect the data, sit down, and approach that particular thing rationally. Assemble the data. Using the data, actually make a decision as to what you want to do, whether you should go this way, whether you should go that way, etc. You will come out of it much more satisfied having used data to actually make your own decision. Okay. Now, in many organizations, this was not the case. There were a lot of very, experienced people, as they popularly call, as they may be the highest paid employee in the organization, who were making decisions without backing up with data. That is changing. Okay, so today more and more decisions, when they are actually being made supported by data, then this field actually is only going to get more and more prominence. If one can imagine the amount of data that is being collected today compared to how it was 30 years ago or even 40 years ago, this field is probably going to be, I would say, a perpetual one for anybody to make a life and career out of it. It's going to be a lot more interesting in the days to come and in the years to come, especially when you think about the amount of data that is probably going to be generated worldwide. And what do you do with it? If you have to make decisions using this data, this is going to be one of the most fascinating spaces to watch out in the next 5, 10, 15 years to come. And after that, there may be another cycle that will actually take this particular field to a next level.
No, absolutely. I agree with you completely that data analytics and the way data is being used in decision making is a very up and coming field and has a huge scope. So what I would like to ask you next is how does a day of a data analyst and particularly an entry level data analyst look like maybe in a company like Cognizant? And especially I would talk about entry level analyst because that'd be more relevant for our audience out here.
Okay, good. See, it doesn't matter, regardless of the organization,
Right.
whether it is Cognizant, non-Cognizant.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't matter, yeah?
Absolutely.
The typical day for a data analyst, and there is a subtle difference, how a day should look like and how a day actually turns out to be.
Yeah.
There is a difference.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what I would encourage youngsters is strive towards the path where you would want the day to look like rather than accept whatever that is given to you. So a typical data analyst should always and every day in his life, ideally, should have this appetite for curiosity. Okay. Now, let's say you start at day 0 and you enter a particular project or you enter an organization. Sure. The first thing you're obviously going to be given is a problem statement. It is prevalent across multiple industries. You're given a task, you're given something to work upon. Now, what I mean by the culture of curiosity here is begin to ask questions. Once you have digested a little bit, there will be some individuals who will immediately ask a question. There will be some individuals who will read, try to understand the problem statement to the best of their abilities. And after that, they may say, yeah, I know this and I can start working on it. But a data analyst, the more and more he asks questions so that the problem statements become very, very clear to him. is the nirvana stage. Okay. So you got to go around. You have to network. You have to speak to people to say, help me understand what is it. What are you trying to achieve? So when you get your hands around the problem statement, when you get your hands around understanding the problem statement, the next step typically that happens is, okay, so in order to actually help solve this particular problem, a data analyst goes around hunting for data. Okay, so where can he go and grab his hands on data that he can actually use to start piecing together in order to solve this problem? I sometimes equate this to even building a home, right? So there is an architect. There's an architect who can give you a nice home plan. He can give you a 3-dimensional plan. He can give you a 2-dimensional plan on paper.
Right.
But then at the end of the day, if you take a mason, okay, he or she needs to know that, hey, okay, so there is a column that needs to come up here. There is an element of brickwork that needs to come here. There is a window that needs to go in here, etc. So they then go out and collect whatever raw material, bricks and mortar and cement and all that and start piecing, right? So imagine if the mason actually starts visualizing how the house is going to look like, and not everybody do it, by the way, okay, because they have said, you got to build this wall, and they quickly go and build the wall and get out. Instead, if they say, okay, so what is this wall going to be used for and all that? And quite often they say, we don't have time in the world. But this is the curiosity element of it. There will always be some people who will be very curious to understand, why am I building whatever that I'm building? In what way it is going to actually serve the organization's purpose? Then, if you take a step back and understand that, and then go about hunting for where you can get the right data in order to solve the problem. So there is an element of data preparation work. You then start analyzing the data. You start looking at the insights, what the data is trying to tell you. That's a very important element or a very important step in the process.
Right.
You may want to see certain patterns. You may actually see certain behavior in that particular data that it is trying to tell you, which others would not have seen.
Sure.
So you start applying your knowledge in data analysis as well as basic statistical inference and all that. So as you move through the ranks of a typical data analyst, there are quite a few activities that you can actually get to before you reach a stage that you can go back to the person who gave you the problem statement and say, this is the extent to which I have actually understood. Now, please tell me if I'm in the right direction or not. I mean, a data analyst at a junior level need not necessarily get everything right on day one.
Yeah.
But this frequent recursive check with the business stakeholders, with the bosses, will naturally help frame his thinking towards moving in the right direction. Okay. So frequent interactions and says, this is what I have found. Is this right? Is this wrong? And somebody would have said, hey, you worked on the wrong data. Somebody would have said, you didn't collect the right data. So the more and more you get to hear these kind of vagaries, the wider actually your perspective begins. So you will then go out and get the right data from right places. Once again, build that back into your database and start working on it. So this act will go through a few iterations before you reach a particular stage where it will help you. First of all, data will help you, give you a very good understanding of what happened in the past. Okay, so that is stage one.
Right.
Now, in some cases, it may be sufficient to just have a very good understanding of what happened in the past, just supported by data alone. In many cases, the problem statement may say, I don't know why it happened. Could you tell me why it happened? That why part of it, if you try to answer using data, saying, these are the 5 reasons why your sales went down. These are the 5 places where your revenue went down. These are the 15 places where your goods is not doing very well. You can produce all that wonderful insights. Now, after that, it's like saying, okay, what next? What do I want to do? Now, can someone tell me what is going to happen in the future? That's when the role of the data analyst gets very interesting. And in a way, the role also changes. You no longer become a data analyst. You start stepping into the true world of being a data scientist. So there is a nice metamorphosis move, transformation from one role to another, But the first role is such an important role that actually says once you have a very good handle on the data, once you have understood very clearly what is going on, and you've painted a very nice picture of what exactly is the current situation or what happened in the past, things become a lot more interesting when you want to go into the future. So, depending on the level of where you are as a data analyst, depending on the sophistication of your job, sophistication of how much you know as a data analyst. Okay, I mean, the range is quite wide, depending on the nature of the industry that you're working on. So, for example, if you take banking, and especially if you take investment banking, data analyst is a very sophisticated role. Okay, the amount of knowledge from a banking perspective, the amount of knowledge in terms of statistical and a little bit of mathematics, probabilities, and all that will be far superior, I would say, in many cases compared to another industry where you're only required to look at, let's say, some sales transactions or commercial transactions or operational related data. So it's not to say one is better than the other. I'm just telling you there is a sophistication that is there in terms of amount of skills that you need to have when you actually take a particular problem statement in a particular industry, in a particular domain. And depending on that, a data analyst, when he starts working across multiple industries, he or she will get a very wide exposure to the range of skills that he needs to bring to the table in order to solve that first stage of the problem. And then leapfrog into the next stage of taking on something a lot more interesting or a lot more exciting.
Sure. So thank you, sir, for so beautifully explaining that. So, sir, if I might ask, let's say for a student in class 12 who's considering a career in data analytics, what advice would you give to such a person? And that advice can be in terms of why he should choose data analytics, a part of which I know you have answered, or it can be from other dimensions as well, as to what future holds for that person, or what kind of jobs that may be available to him or her going forward.
Okay.
So these dimensions we can touch upon.
Very good. Very good. See, let's take this whole answer from a very lightweight perspective and slowly build the momentum, right?
Sure.
See, first of all, a data analyst job, provided you take up any job, provided you actually do very good work, meaning you put your blood, sweat, and tears, you put your heart and mind into it. It is going to be very enriching. But however, from a data analyst type role perspective, first of all, it's going to be a well-paid job. Okay. Now, many of them would be very excited and motivated by money. So first of all, if you take up data analysis and you do a great job as being a data analyst, trust me, there is quite a bit of money that is actually out there in terms of job offers, the amount of money that you will get paid. Now, it will fluctuate. It will change over time, definitely, as the area becomes much more sophisticated. But what is very interesting at this point in time is if you have an acumen, first of all, and this is very important, there are a lot of people today, especially in India, where I see, somehow there is an aversion towards mathematics. Some people have aversion towards numbers. Okay. Now, I don't know why. I mean, a psychologist may be better at explaining why is it that they don't like. This is like saying, for instance, I don't like poetry. Okay, I never appreciated, I never understood poetry. I never did well in English poetry or any other language poetry. Similarly, there is a greater degree of people whom I'm coming across. Somehow they don't have an affinity towards, let's say, mathematics and numbers related subjects. They get very flustered. Okay, they're saying this is not for me. You have to, first of all, get over that fear. Don't worry about it. There are hundreds of other job opportunities and roles. But if you have taken a conscious decision to come into this particular field, I'm pretty sure you are someone who may not be great at mathematics and statistics and others, but you are good at it. And secondly, it's not that you hate those things. Yeah, you see what I mean? You like them. Okay. It's not necessary that you should score 100 out of 100 in those subjects and be the super duper geek um, who can be a whiz kid in math or stats, but you like that subject and you have reasonably good understanding. Now, for someone who is coming into this particular area and want to take up a career in data analyst, besides the money part of it, if you have an aptitude, first of all, to play around with data, okay? Now, that is something that you should have as a skill. You should not be averse to actually. In some cases, interestingly, you must have often heard this phrase, right? Sometimes knowing data, having data in hand is power. Knowledge is power, but this is also power today.
Yeah.
If you have access to some extremely good data and you know how to use that data for decision making,
sure.
There is a great degree of power. So people who like power, people who like to actually say, hey, I'm a very powerful guy, this is a great role. By the way, a data analyst who looks at data from multiple perspectives.
That's an interesting
third one
take.
is creativity. Now, some people take creativity to the extreme. If you actually start, there is a very famous proverb that says, if you start squeezing data, it will start yielding some results. So an element of curiosity combined with some creativity to say, how am I going to actually visualize this data is very important. So data alone, as numbers and other things, puts off people and business managers and business executives. Instead, if you have a creative way of presenting this data after you have done all the analysis, then that is something that is very exciting. So you naturally start progressing one level above as you move through this particular role. In the early days, you may be responsible for collecting a lot of data. You may then be putting it together. You may then start doing some basic analysis. You may then be supporting a senior data analyst in actually bringing several things together. When you start getting into the world of trying to solve certain business problems or answer some questions on the business problem, then this role gets much more exciting. Okay, so as you move through the ranks of being a junior data analyst all the way till senior data analyst, you will often be called upon to explain. Why did you do this? How did you do this? Where did you go and get this data? What is this data trying to say? So you will be put on the spot. And it's very nice, right? It's a premium spot to be in. You are the man who is going to be questioned to say, why did you actually do whatever you did? And that increases an individual's ego also. So it is beginning to actually move up. And if you all know the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, besides the money part of it, besides, hey, is this work satisfying for me or not? As you work your way through being a solid data analyst, inching and moving towards being a data scientist, you start actually feeling within yourself that you are doing some really great work in this particular field. So there is something a lot more than money and power and other things besides being recognition, that the ability to actually see what others cannot see in itself becomes very gratifying. Very, very gratifying. So that's why data analysts are really valued. Okay. Yes, data scientists are also valued, if not more, but the initial role of being a data analyst cannot be undermined at all. It's very important. It's a very, very, sometimes roles are clubbed. Sometimes a data analyst can also be actually a data scientist or vice versa. But let's stick to this realm of being a good data analyst. And what defines good beyond a particular stage is left to your own area of interest, to what extent you want to stretch yourself, how far you want to go in this. Or do you want to branch off into the adjacent role of a data scientist? So it's going to be very interesting. It is very exciting and fascinating. If you just split, and I'll pause here very quickly. If you just split the two words together, away, one is data and the other one is analysis. Think about it. It is the analysis which makes or gives a shape to that data as to what it is trying to tell you. Similarly, analysis is not possible without data. So the two of them also are interdependent. You cannot do analysis if you don't have data. So you call a data scientist and you go and do this. And if he says, hey, I don't have data at all, what kind of analysis he can do? Similarly, when you have very good data, then what do you do with it? Now, there are organizations that are sitting on tons and tons of data. Nobody has had the appetite, or people have not had the appetite to sit down, go through it, analyze it in detail, get to know about it, and then make some informed decisions out of it. So when there is data, there is room for analysis. When you do analysis, you need data. And when the world actually starts generating more and more of data, these two parts will actually be gaining a lot more prominence than what it is today.
No, absolutely, Mr. Raman, that makes sense. And I think we have come to the end of this discussion. And thank you so much for explaining it so beautifully. I hope that these insights are useful to the students who are watching this and help them make an informed choice about why they should go into the field of data analytics. And thank you once again for coming here with us and doing this for us.
Thank you, and wish you all the very best. Um, and this is a fascinating space. This is a very exciting space. I'm sure people who would take up this sincerely and down to the bottom of their heart will not regret looking back in 10 years or 15 years from now, whether they should have gone down this route or not. So once again, wish each and every one of them a great career in this particular field. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.